The late afternoon sun poured golden streams through the vast windows of the mansion, painting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Inside, Alexander Kane, 42, a billionaire known for his icy composure and relentless ambition, sat in his office, staring blankly at the city below. His tailored suit was perfect, his office immaculate, yet today, nothing felt right. Alexander had built an empire, controlled millions, yet he couldn't control the gnawing emptiness inside. Across the hall, in the nursery filled with pastel colors and soft toys, lay his little daughter, Emily, 8 years old, her small frame fragile under the weight of her paralysis. She watched the world through large, curious eyes that never lost their wonder, even though she could no longer run, dance, or play as other children did. Her laughter had been replaced with quiet sighs, and her attempts to move had turned into silent struggles that broke Alexander's heart every day. Today was different. Today, Alexander faced a choice that made his chest tighten. He had been preparing for a high-stakes business deal that could earn him another billion, a deal that could secure his family's legacy. Yet, his mind kept wandering to Emily, alone in the nursery, staring at the empty backyard. She deserved joy. She deserved life beyond the golden cage her father had built for her. And deep down, Alexander knew that money had never healed what truly mattered: the warmth of human connection, the magic of a child's smile. And then, from the street outside, he heard it, the faint rhythm of music, delicate but raw, carried by the wind. A small crowd had gathered near the gates, but it wasn't loud enough to disturb the world Alexander lived in. Curiosity piqued, he stepped closer to the window, squinting through the glass. A poor boy, perhaps no older than 12, danced with a passion that seemed to defy the dusty, worn streets around him. His shoes were torn, his clothes ragged, yet his movements were pure poetry. His eyes, bright with hope and determination, darted toward something or someone. And then Alexander saw it: Emily, sitting in her wheelchair at the edge of the crowd, her tiny hands gripping the wheels as she watched the boy's every move. Time slowed. Alexander felt an unfamiliar knot of fear and excitement tighten in his chest. Should he stop the boy? Should he call security, the way he always did when strangers approached the mansion? Or should he let this small miracle continue? Could he risk everything to let a stranger touch his daughter's world? Could he trust that something so simple, a dance, a smile, a boy with nothing but courage, might heal a wound money never could? And then, with a deep, almost imperceptible exhale, Alexander made a choice. The sunlight streamed through the giant windows, falling onto the vast expanse of Alexander's office like liquid gold. The city outside shimmered, yet inside, the mansion felt strangely still, almost as if it too were holding its breath. Emily's small fingers clutched the wheels of her chair, anticipation sparkling in her eyes. Alexander watched her carefully, noting the subtle curl of her lips at the first beat of the music. He decided to leave the office unnoticed, slipping down the grand staircase, past his assistants who were busy in their daily routines, and out the side door that led to the garden. He kept his presence hidden, preferring to see how the boy would react to Emily without the shadow of his wealth looming over the scene. The boy didn't notice Alexander at first. He moved with the kind of freedom Alexander had long forgotten, spinning, jumping, and sliding on the cracked pavement, his bare feet slapping against the concrete with rhythm and joy. Alexander's heart ached with every movement. This child, poor and small, had a spark Alexander hadn't felt in years, a courage that came not from wealth or power, but from sheer will and innocence. Emily laughed softly, the sound like chimes in the wind. She pointed at the boy, her voice breaking with excitement. "Daddy, look at him." Alexander's eyes met hers, and for a moment, everything else faded: the deals, the power, the empire. It all felt meaningless compared to the light in his daughter's eyes. He realized then that he had been blind to the simplest truths: that happiness isn't bought, it's felt; that love can appear in the most unexpected places; that miracles often come wrapped in dust and rags. Gathering his courage, Alexander stepped out into the yard, his shadow stretching long across the warm concrete. The boy froze for a second, startled by the presence of a man in an expensive suit. His eyes flickered with fear, the kind of fear born from a lifetime of survival in a world that rarely offered kindness. Alexander raised a hand slowly, signaling peace, and then spoke, his voice soft but steady. "Don't stop. Dance for her. She needs this more than you know." The boy's eyes widened. He looked from Alexander to Emily and then back, uncertain.
Could this stranger really mean it? Could he trust that the man wouldn't chase him away, that this magic moment could survive in a world that had been cruel to him?
He nodded slowly, a hesitant spark of hope lighting his face.
And then, as if a dam had broken, he danced like never before, twisting, spinning, leaping with a joy so pure that even the air seemed to hum around him. Emily clapped, laughed, and squealed, her wheelchair bouncing slightly with excitement.
Alexander felt a lump in his throat, a mixture of awe, relief, and fear. He didn't know if this moment could last, didn't know if reality would shatter it like it had so many times before. As the dance ended, the boy collapsed to the ground, panting, his small chest heaving. Alexander rushed forward instinctively, offering his hand. The boy looked at him suspiciously, but Alexander's smile was genuine, his eyes sincere.
"You did something incredible," he said.
"For her."
The boy's expression softened, and he let Alexander help him to his feet.
The connection between them was fragile, new, yet powerful, a bond formed not by money or status, but by something far rarer, trust and empathy.
Just as Alexander was about to invite the boy into the house, a loud, sharp honk sounded from the street.
A black luxury car screeched to a halt at the gate. Alexander's personal assistant, a stern woman named Vanessa, stepped out, her face pale with panic.
"Sir, there's a situation. Someone's claiming this boy isn't supposed to be here. They say."
Before she could finish, Alexander made a choice that would shock everyone. He stepped in front of Emily, put a protective hand on the boy's shoulder, and said, "No.
He stays. And if anyone has a problem, they'll have to go through me."
Vanessa's eyes widened, her mouth opening in protest, but Alexander didn't flinch. Something deep inside him had awakened, a part that had lain dormant for too long beneath the layers of wealth and control. He would protect this boy, this moment, this light of hope for his daughter, no matter the cost. And in that instant, the air seemed to change. The city beyond the gates was still, as if it too were holding its breath. Alexander knew the decision he had made could unravel everything he had built, but he also knew that some things were worth more than power, more than money. Suddenly, from the shadows near the gate, a figure emerged. Tall, imposing, and dressed in black, the man's face was hidden behind a mask. He held a small device in his hand, glowing red. The boy froze, Emily gasped, and Alexander's heart pounded. The late afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long, trembling shadows across the mansion's grand driveway. Alexander Kane stood frozen, his hand still on the boy's shoulder, eyes locked on the figure at the gate. The masked man did not speak. He only held the small red device tightly in one hand, its glow pulsating like a heartbeat in the tense air. Emily clutched her wheelchair's wheels, her wide eyes reflecting fear and curiosity. Alexander's mind raced. He had faced ruthless competitors, betrayals, even death threats, but nothing like this. This wasn't a business matter. This was personal. And somehow, it felt bigger, darker, and closer than he could ever have imagined. "Stay behind me," Alexander whispered to Emily, his voice firm, his tone leaving no room for argument. The boy, still trembling from the earlier dance, instinctively stepped closer to Emily, a silent pact forming between the three of them. The stranger took a step forward, then another, his movements deliberate, precise. "Alexander Kane," he said, his voice distorted by the mask. "You have interfered in matters far beyond your understanding. That boy, he is not merely a dancer. And you have no idea what you've just set in motion." Alexander's eyes narrowed. "I don't care who he is. He brings joy to my daughter, and that is enough. If you want to threaten us, you'll have to go through me." The masked man paused, as if studying Alexander, weighing something unseen. Then, without warning, he pressed a button on the device. A high-pitched whirring filled the air, like 1,000 tiny wings fluttering in unison. Alexander's heart skipped a beat as a holographic image projected from the device, hovering in the air between them. It was a map, detailed, intricate, and filled with blinking red markers. Alexander recognized the names of places he had never intended to visit, locations he had never wanted to know about. And at the center of it all was one label, glowing brighter than the rest: the Orphan District. "You don't understand," the masked man continued. "That boy is the last surviving witness to something that could destroy everything you've built. His dance, his presence, it has drawn attention. And now, because of your interference, the world is watching."
Emily gasped, her small hands trembling. "Daddy, what does he mean?" Alexander swallowed hard.
He had no clear answer. But he did know one thing: the boy was in danger. And he would not allow anyone to harm Emily or the child who had just brought light into their lives. "Listen carefully," the stranger said, lifting the device higher. "You have 24 hours to surrender the boy, or everything you hold dear will be in jeopardy."
"This is not a request. This is a warning."
With that, the figure turned and disappeared into the shadowy streets beyond the gate, leaving behind only the fading hum of the device and a chilling silence that made Alexander shiver.
Alexander bent down, meeting the boy's wide, fearful eyes. "Did you hear that?" he asked gently. "You're in danger. But I promise you, I will protect you. No matter what."
The boy's lips trembled, but he nodded.
I
trust you," he whispered. Emily's small hand reached out, touching the boy's arm. "Please, don't let anyone take him away," she said, her voice trembling but firm.
Alexander's jaw tightened.
He realized that his life, his daughter's happiness, and even the empire he had built could be at stake. But he also knew one undeniable truth: courage and love could sometimes outweigh power and wealth, even in the face of overwhelming danger.
He made a decision. Instead of calling security or hiding inside the mansion, Alexander turned to the boy. "We're going to leave.
You, me, Emily, we're going somewhere safe, somewhere no one can find us."
The boy's eyes widened. "But I don't even know you," he said, voice shaking. "I know enough," Alexander said firmly. "And right now, that has to be enough."
They moved quickly through the mansion, Alexander supporting Emily and guiding the boy down a private stairwell that led to an underground garage. The expensive cars, gleaming and polished, looked almost ridiculous in the shadow of the danger they now faced.
Alexander ignored them.
Their lives were more important than any possessions.
Once outside, Alexander led them to a sleek black SUV, its engine already running.
"Get in," he instructed. The boy hesitated, glancing at the car with suspicion. But the intensity in Alexander's eyes left no room for doubt. They had to trust him, even if they didn't fully understand why. As they drove through the twisting streets, the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting the city in an eerie twilight. Alexander's mind was racing with plans, contingencies, and worst-case scenarios.
Who was that masked man? What did he want with the boy? And most importantly, how could Alexander protect the child, Emily, and himself from whatever was coming? The SUV stopped in front of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city.
Inside, it smelled of dust and old wood, but it was empty and hidden, a perfect temporary refuge.
Alexander helped Emily inside, tucking her in safely, and then turned to the boy. "You're safe here, for now," he said.
But even as he spoke, Alexander couldn't shake the feeling that their safety was fragile, like a thin sheet of ice over a dark, unknown lake. And in the quiet moments that followed, he began to see the truth: this boy, with nothing but hope and talent, had just pulled Alexander into a world he could never have imagined. Suddenly, the boy spoke, his voice small but determined.
They're going to come back, aren't they?" Alexander nodded grimly. "Yes. But we're not going to wait for them. We're going to act first."
Emily looked up at him, her eyes full of trust.
"Daddy, what are we going to do?" Alexander took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him like never before. "We're going to fight. We're going to protect each other. And no matter what happens, we're going to survive."
Outside, the wind howled through the empty streets, carrying with it an unseen threat that was closing in faster than they could imagine. And somewhere in the shadows, the masked man watched, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Alexander glanced at the boy, then at Emily, and made a silent vow: no one, no power, no threat would ever take this light from his daughter again. But even as he said it to himself, he knew the challenge ahead would test everything he believed in and force him to make choices he had never thought possible. The first night in hiding passed with tension and whispered conversations. The boy told Alexander fragments of his story: how he had witnessed something terrible, how people he trusted had vanished, and how his dance had been his only way of coping with fear. Emily listened silently, occasionally reaching out to touch his hand, as if connecting through hope alone.
Alexander realized then that this small, ragged boy carried within him a truth far more dangerous and powerful than any business deal he had ever navigated.
And he knew that protecting him would require more than money, influence, or strategy. It would demand courage, ingenuity, and perhaps even sacrifice. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Alexander stood by the warehouse window, watching the city wake. Somewhere out there, the masked man waited. And Alexander knew, with a chill settling in his bones, that this was only the beginning. The early morning fog hung heavy over the outskirts of the city, wrapping the abandoned warehouse in a cloak of silence. Inside, Alexander Kane paced the dusty floor, his mind racing. Emily sat quietly on a makeshift couch, her small fingers fidgeting with a blanket, while the boy, whose name Alexander had learned was Ravi, leaned against the wall, eyes wide and alert. Alexander had spent the night trying to piece together the fragments of Ravi's story. The boy had witnessed something that had frightened powerful people, something so dangerous that even Alexander's vast resources might not be enough to protect him. Every word Ravi had spoken hinted at a shadowy world, hidden from public eyes, where betrayal and violence were normal. And now, that world had turned its gaze on them. Alexander finally stopped pacing, his jaw tight.
Ravi, I need you to tell me everything you know. Every detail. Nothing is too small. Ravi swallowed hard.
His voice shook, but he spoke. I saw them take the children.
The ones who refused to obey. They're building something, some kind of experiment. And I ran because I saw too much. My dance. I used it to hide, to survive, to make them think I was just a kid playing on the street.
Emily leaned forward, her eyes wide.
They took kids? Ravi nodded.
Yes.
And they'll come for me if I stay, or if someone else knows too much. Alexander clenched his fists.
He had faced hostile boards of directors, rival billionaires, even life-threatening business schemes, but nothing had ever filled him with the same rage he felt now. Someone was using children for something terrible, and Ravi's courage had brought the truth to light. He realized that protecting this boy wasn't just about Emily's happiness, it was about stopping something far worse. Alexander turned to Emily, his voice soft but firm.
I know this is scary, sweetheart. But we're going to make sure no one hurts him.
And we're going to stop whoever is behind this.
Emily's tiny hand reached out and held Ravi's.
We're together, she said. Ravi looked at her, his small face brightening despite the fear.
You mean it? Alexander knelt to Ravi's level.
I promise you, you're safe as long as I'm here.
And we're going to fight back.
The sound of metal scraping against concrete echoed faintly outside.
Alexander stiffened.
He moved quietly to the door, peering through a small crack in the wood. In the dim light, he could see the masked man again, lingering near the perimeter, watching, waiting.
They're back, Alexander whispered. And they know we're here. Ravi's small body tensed. I thought they couldn't find me here.
His voice trailed off, fear overtaking him. Alexander turned to Emily, determination burning in his eyes.
We can't wait. We have to act first. We need a plan, and we need to move quickly. Hours passed as Alexander went to work.
He scanned maps, searched databases, and contacted trusted allies, people who owed him favors or who had once worked for him in security. The stakes had risen beyond business or personal pride. This was a battle for survival, for truth, and for justice. By late afternoon, Alexander had assembled a rough plan. They would leave the city entirely, heading to a secluded safe house far from prying eyes. Along the way, he would gather evidence about the organization behind the kidnappings, and he would use every resource at his disposal to stop them. As they prepared to leave, Ravi paused, glancing nervously at Alexander.
You really think we can do this? Alexander smiled faintly, though his heart pounded. I don't just think it, Ravi. I know it. Courage isn't measured by size or age, it's measured by heart.
And you've already shown more courage than most adults.
Emily clutched her father's hand tightly. "We're going to be okay, right?" Alexander held her close. "Yes, sweetheart. We'll be okay. And we'll make sure no one ever hurts you or him again."
As night fell, they slipped out of the warehouse and into the darkness, moving silently through empty streets.
Alexander's car, unassuming and reliable, became their shield. Every shadow seemed to hide danger, every sound a potential threat. But Alexander's determination was unwavering. Hours later, they reached a safe house in the remote hills outside the city. The house was simple, almost austere, but it was isolated and secure.
Inside, Alexander set up a temporary command center, laptops, communication devices, and cameras connected to the outside world. He was ready to track the masked man, ready to uncover the truth, ready to protect the boy and his daughter at any cost.
But even in this sanctuary, Alexander couldn't ignore the growing tension.
The masked man was patient, calculating, and ruthless. And every moment they remained in hiding gave him time to strike.
Ravi, sensing the weight of the danger, finally spoke again. I think they'll come for me tonight." Alexander nodded grimly. "Then tonight, we prepare. We stay alert. And if they come, we won't run, we'll fight."
Emily looked up at him, determination in her young eyes.
"I can help," she said. "I might be small, but I can help too." Alexander felt a surge of pride.
Her bravery reminded him why he had chosen to protect this moment of joy, this spark of hope.
"Yes, sweetheart," he said softly. "Together, we'll face whatever comes. And together, we'll win." But as they settled in for the night, a chilling thought crept into Alexander's mind: courage and heart might not be enough. The masked man had powers, resources, and intelligence beyond anything Alexander had anticipated. And in the darkness outside, the faint glow of red light pulsed from a distance, an ominous reminder that their struggle had only just begun. The safe house was silent except for the faint hum of electronic equipment Alexander had set up. The night outside was pitch black, save for the occasional flicker of distant streetlights.
Inside, Emily slept fitfully on a makeshift bed, her small face twisted in dreams filled with both fear and hope. Ravi sat beside the window, his eyes wide and alert, fingers clutching the curtain, waiting for any sign of danger. Alexander moved like a shadow, checking every door, every window, every corner, ensuring no intruder could reach them unnoticed.
Hours passed in tense vigilance.
Alexander knew that the masked man was clever and patient. He wouldn't attack recklessly.
He would wait for the perfect moment, for a lapse in their attention.
Alexander's mind raced with possibilities, calculating every move, every escape route, every contingency. Suddenly, a faint sound pierced the silence, a soft, almost imperceptible clicking, coming from the perimeter of the property.
Alexander froze.
He held up a hand to Ravi, signaling him to stay silent. The boy's breath hitched as he pressed against the window, peering into the darkness. Then, as if the night itself had betrayed them, a shadow moved across the yard. The masked man had arrived.
Alexander didn't panic, he couldn't.
He had to stay calm, precise, and controlled. Slowly, he motioned for Ravi to follow him to a hidden corner of the safe house, out of sight, while he prepared to confront the intruder.
The masked man stepped into the faint moonlight, holding the glowing red device.
"Alexander Kane," he said, his voice cold and unnerving.
"You should have surrendered the boy. Now, your choices are limited." Alexander squared his shoulders. "I will not let you take him. Not him. Not Emily. Not anyone I care about." A tense silence filled the air.
Then the masked man pressed a button on the device, and a soft hum grew into a sharp, piercing frequency that rattled the windows.
Alexander felt the vibrations through his bones.
The walls seemed to shiver.
It wasn't just a warning, it was a weapon. Ravi gasped. What is that?" "It's nothing we can ignore," Alexander said grimly.
He realized then that brute force would not work, they needed strategy, cunning, and timing. He scanned the room quickly, spotting the old iron pipes along the walls, the loose floorboards, and the emergency generator outside.
An idea formed, risky but promising.
He whispered to Ravi, "Follow my lead."
If I give the signal, run to the back exit and stay out of sight. Ravi nodded, fear and trust mingling in his eyes.
Alexander moved to the front door, pretending to confront the masked man directly, buying the boy and Emily a few precious seconds.
The masked man raised the device, ready to strike, but Alexander had already acted.
With a sudden movement, he kicked a loose floorboard outside, causing it to strike the ground with a loud clatter.
The masked man's attention shifted for a fraction of a second. That was all Alexander needed.
Now, he shouted to Ravi.
The boy bolted, racing to the back exit, Emily safely in Alexander's arms.
The masked man lunged, but Alexander had already anticipated this. He grabbed a length of rope from the garage, throwing it over the device's delicate wires.
Sparks flew as the connection short-circuited, and the high-pitched hum vanished in an instant. The masked man stumbled, momentarily disoriented. Alexander seized the moment, tackling him to the ground and pulling the mask away.
For the first time, the intruder's face was visible, a young man, perhaps in his 20s, with sharp, haunted eyes and an expression twisted by anger and desperation.
"Who are you?" Alexander demanded, holding him firmly.
The man's lips curled into a bitter smile.
"You think this is about me? It's never about me.
It's about power, secrets, control.
That boy knows too much.
And you've interfered with something you can't even begin to understand."
Alexander's mind raced. He had to act, and fast. He couldn't afford to be overpowered or outsmarted. "Then explain. Now."
"Every word. If you think you can threaten my daughter or this boy, you're wrong."
The young man laughed darkly. "Explain? Very well.
That boy Ravi, he witnessed the transfer of children taken for illegal experiments.
Powerful people want him silenced. You've protected him, yes, but now, they will come for you too. They won't stop until everyone who knows the truth is gone."
Emily clutched Alexander's arm, tears brimming in her eyes.
"Daddy, they can't take him." Alexander shook his head, determination solidifying in his chest. "No one will. Not while I'm alive."
"And you," he said, glaring at the young man, "will not leave this place until I know the full truth, and you swear you won't harm anyone else." The young man's gaze flickered, revealing a hint of fear beneath his hardened exterior.
You don't know what you're dealing with. They're everywhere. And if they find out I talked, you'll regret it." Alexander's hand tightened on his shoulder. "I've faced worse than threats."
"You will tell me everything you know, every detail, and then you will help me protect these children. Otherwise, nothing you say matters, because you won't survive the consequences of crossing me." For a long moment, silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then the young man sighed, defeated.
"Fine," he said quietly.
"I'll tell you. But once I start, there's no turning back for any of us." Ravi peeked around the corner, his eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and fear.
They're really going to tell us?" Alexander nodded. "Yes.
And it's up to us to make sure we use that information wisely. The truth is dangerous, but it's also the only thing that can save you, Emily, and every other child they've taken." Outside, the night remained still, almost eerily so, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Inside, a new battle had begun, a battle of secrets, strategy, and courage. And Alexander knew, deep down, that the next choices they made would determine not just their survival, but the fate of countless innocent lives. The warehouse was still, but the air inside felt charged, almost electric, as the young masked man, now revealed as Jonah, began speaking. His voice was low, hesitant at first, but grew firmer as he shared the story that had haunted him for years. Alexander, Emily, and Ravi listened intently, the weight of each word pressing on their hearts. "They started small," Jonah said, his eyes flickering with shame. "A few children, hidden from the world.
No one noticed at first.
But it grew, bigger, stronger.
Powerful people you'd never suspect, are behind it.
Governments, corporations, even some charities. They see the children as experiments, assets, things to control the future."
"Ravi, you saw the wrong thing at the wrong time. That's why they came for you. Ravi's small body trembled. They're still going to come? Alexander's jaw tightened. Yes. But they don't know what I'm capable of.
They don't know the lengths I'll go to protect my daughter, or you. Emily reached out, touching Ravi's hand.
We'll fight together, she said softly. We won't let them win. Jonah nodded, resigned. You need to understand, this isn't just about one boy. There are hundreds.
And they'll stop at nothing to silence anyone who sees the truth.
Alexander's mind raced.
He had built an empire on calculated risks, but nothing in his business experience had prepared him for this, a network so vast and sinister, it threatened innocent lives.
And yet, he knew he couldn't hesitate. Every second of inaction gave the perpetrators a chance to strike. We have to act, Alexander said, his voice firm. We'll gather evidence, expose them, and protect the children. But first, we need allies. People we can trust completely. Jonah swallowed hard. There are a few. People inside the organization who have begun to question what they're doing.
But they're scared of losing everything, scared of retaliation.
Alexander nodded. Then we give them a reason to fight.
We show them that the truth can win, and that protecting these children is more important than fear.
For the next several hours, they strategized.
Alexander divided tasks carefully. Emily would stay safe but be involved in monitoring and communication, her presence reminding them all why they fought. Ravi, despite his fear, insisted on helping. He knew the streets, the back alleys, the hidden ways people could move without being detected. Jonah, reluctantly but inevitably, provided inside knowledge, the organization's routines, weaknesses, and hidden locations. As night fell, Alexander felt a shift in the room, a sense of purpose that had been missing for far too long. The fear was still there, but so was determination, courage, and the spark of hope that Ravi's dance had ignited weeks ago. Suddenly, the sound of movement outside broke the quiet.
Alexander motioned for everyone to stay calm. He peeked through the small window and saw a black van parked near the edge of the property.
The masked man, perhaps one of his associates, was scanning the area.
They're scouting, Jonah whispered. They know we're active. Alexander clenched his fists. Then we can't wait. Tonight, we take the first step.
We gather proof of their operations and show the world what they've been hiding.
We'll expose them, no matter the cost. Ravi nodded, eyes wide but determined. I want to help. I can show you the places I've seen them take the children. I know some of the hiding spots. Emily reached out to him. We'll do it together. We're stronger together. Alexander felt a swell of pride for both children.
They were small, vulnerable, yet brave beyond their years.
Good, he said. Then we move at first light.
Carefully, quietly, but decisively. Every child we save is worth the risk. Every piece of evidence we capture is a step toward justice. The night was long, filled with whispered planning, the occasional creak of the safe house settling, and the quiet hum of technology. Alexander reviewed maps and routes repeatedly, calculating every possible outcome. He knew the organization would be ruthless, willing to destroy anyone in their way. But he also knew they had underestimated him, underestimated the lengths a father would go to protect his daughter, and the courage of a boy who refused to be silenced. By the early morning, the first light of dawn painted the sky in muted shades of pink and orange. The black van was gone, but Alexander knew it was only a matter of time before the organization regrouped. Every second counted. Every move mattered. He looked at Emily and Ravi, seeing the trust and hope in their eyes. He took a deep breath. Today, we fight back. Not just for you two, but for every child they've harmed. And we won't stop until we've brought the truth to light. Jonah, who had once been complicit in the organization, looked at Alexander with a mixture of fear and newfound respect. If we do this, there's no turning back, he said quietly. Alexander nodded. I know. But some things are worth fighting for, even when the risk is everything. Robbie's small voice broke the tense silence. Then, let's do it. Let's save them.
Emily squeezed his hand. We're not afraid, because we have each other. Outside, the city was waking, unaware of the storm that was about to strike. But inside the safe house, for hearts beat as one, united by courage, hope, and the promise of justice. And Alexander knew that whatever came next, their bold actions would change lives forever, starting with the lives of children who had been silenced for too long. But even as they prepared to move, a faint sound echoed from the darkness, soft footsteps, deliberate and close. Someone had found them already. The early morning air was sharp and still as Alexander, Emily, Ravi, and Jonah moved silently through the outskirts of the city. Every shadow seemed to stretch unnaturally, every distant sound amplified by their fear and anticipation. The black van that had scouted their safe house the previous night was gone, but Alexander knew it wouldn't be long before more operatives arrived. The organization was vast, ruthless, and relentless, but he had a plan. Ravi led the way, guiding them to narrow alleyways and hidden paths only a child familiar with the streets could know. His small, agile movements contrasted sharply with Alexander's deliberate strides, but they were a perfect team. Emily stayed close to Alexander, her eyes wide yet determined, a quiet reminder of why this mission mattered. Finally, they arrived at an abandoned warehouse, a hub Jonah had identified as one of the main operations centers. Inside, the faint sound of children crying echoed through the halls. Alexander's heart clenched. Every child represented an innocent life stolen, every moment of delay meant more suffering. He tightened his grip on Emily's hand. Stay close, but don't be afraid. We're here to bring them home. Jonah led them through a hidden side entrance, explaining the security measures as they went. Cameras, silent alarms, guards. Alexander had anticipated all this, but the sheer scale of the operation was staggering. He realized that courage alone wouldn't be enough, they would need cunning, speed, and a bit of luck. They reached the main room. Rows of children, tired and scared, were confined behind makeshift barriers. When the children noticed Ravi, a flicker of hope crossed their faces. Alexander's heart ached, but he forced himself to focus. This was the moment to act. Alexander gave the signal. Ravi ran forward, calling to the children, "Follow me. You're safe now." One by one, the children rushed toward the exits Alexander had prepared, their small feet pattering like the rhythm of freedom. Guards shouted, alarms blared, but Alexander, Jonah, and Emily acted decisively, using every advantage they had studied the previous night. It was chaotic, tense, but coordinated. Alexander felt a surge of pride as the children ran past him, free at last. Emily, despite her disability, encouraged them with her voice, clapping and cheering, her laughter echoing like a bell of hope. Then, from the shadows, the masked man appeared again, flanked by several operatives. "You think you can stop us?" he snarled, raising a weapon. Alexander stepped forward, calm but commanding. "I don't think. I know." He moved with precision, using the environment to his advantage, disarming the attackers with quick, calculated actions. Jonah and Ravi assisted, and Emily's fearless cheering kept the children moving, a heartbeat of courage that couldn't be ignored. In the chaos, the masked man hesitated, distracted by the sudden courage of children he had underestimated. Alexander seized the moment, tackling him to the ground. The mask came off, revealing a familiar face Jonah had warned them about, one of the organization's leaders, young but hardened by greed and ambition. "You're finished," Alexander said firmly, securing him until authorities, whom Jonah had discreetly contacted, arrived. The organization's network would unravel. Every child they had taken would be traced and rescued, and the truth would finally come to light. The rescued children gathered around Emily, their small hands reaching for hers. Ravi stood beside her, proud and smiling for the first time in months. Alexander knelt beside them, overwhelmed by emotion. "You're all safe now. You're free." Emily's eyes sparkled as she turned to Alexander. "Daddy, we did it." Alexander smiled, tears pricking at his eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. We did it together. And because of your courage, hope, and love, these children will have a future." Ravi looked at Alexander, his face radiant with gratitude. "Thank you, for trusting me, for believing in me." Alexander placed a gentle hand on Ravi's shoulder. "It wasn't just me. It was all of us. Courage, hope, and heart, that's what saved them. And you, Ravi, taught me that even a small boy can change the world. Outside, the sun rose, bathing the city in golden light. The nightmare was over, replaced by the warmth of freedom and the promise of new beginnings. Alexander watched Emily laugh as she wheeled herself among the children, Ravi dancing beside her, their joy echoing across the empty streets. In that moment, Alexander realized a truth he had never fully understood before: wealth and power could open doors, but they could never create happiness. True happiness came from love, courage, and the bonds that connected them to one another. And sometimes, it was the smallest, most unexpected people, the children, the boy dancing in the street, who reminded him of that. Jonah, now on their side completely, nodded at Alexander. "You've done something remarkable. These children will remember you forever." Alexander shook his head. "No, it's not me. It's them. Emily, Ravi, and every brave child out there who refuses to give up. They've taught me more than I could ever teach them." As authorities took the criminals into custody, Alexander, Emily, and Ravi stood together, watching the first rays of morning light glint off the city skyline. The city was waking, unaware of the storm that had passed, but Alexander knew that a small act of courage, a single dance, and a father's love had changed everything. Emily looked up at him, eyes full of wonder. "Daddy, will they be safe now?" Alexander smiled, pulling her close. "Yes, sweetheart. Safe and free. And because of you, and because of Ravi, the world is a little brighter today." Ravi grinned, spinning once, like a dancer in the sun, and Alexander realized that this boy, once small, scared, and alone, had become a symbol of hope for everyone. And in that golden light, Alexander knew one undeniable truth: sometimes, it only takes one act of courage, one bold decision, and one small heart to change the world forever.